all so much for joining us this evening. I know it is your evening time, and so it is truly my pleasure to be here to speak with you this evening. I want to spend a couple of seconds just introducing myself before we get started. I'm Jacqueline Peachuth. I am based in the New York office, and as Sharon so nicely explained, I work for Eagle Productivity Solutions, which is a group company of NIIT. So what do? I am a sales and innovation designer, which at the core of it means that it is my job and focus to look at what's happening in the industries, specifically in the training and life science sector, and try to understand what the next thing we need to do to help continue with business continuity and overcome any obstacles that there may be. And so that's truly what my focus is. And it's why it's my pleasure to be here today in this current environment to speak with all of you, because we have identified that there are some areas where we really think we can truly bring not only solutions, but support and help to you all. So with that, just a little bit of background of what is Eagle, because I think that helps to anchor the conversation today. And I do want to also mention, because it is your evening and because you are taking your time this evening, I want to welcome you to relax, maybe take a cup of tea, and join me in this hopefully fun, informative webinar. I don't want this to be boring. I want it to be interesting. I want you to feel engaged. And ultimately, I want you to leave this session with us all today feeling that this has been really valuable for you and you've learned hopefully a lot of good ideas and can continue the conversation with us outside of this hour that we'll spend together. So within the conversation today, I am going to ask for points of engagement from you. So if you were paying attention to what Sharon said in the beginning, we do offer opportunities where you can showcase. If you raise your hand, you can click on a little green check mark or a little red X. And I do ask that we just practice that really fast because I want to be checking in with you as I'm talking. So can everyone click on their participant panel and hit the green check mark if you're with me? I see a couple coming on here. This is great. All right, excellent. Thank you so much. It's really good to see you're all participating and ready to and willing to be a part of this. So as I mentioned, Eagle really has a very large breadth of experience when it comes to life sciences. In fact, that's really our focus in our customer base. So a couple of years ago, when we joined the NIIT family, that's what we brought really as a part of that merger and that integration. We brought the breadth of our experience in training for our life science partners. And so this screen right here just shows you a couple of people or a couple of companies that we've worked with. But in fact, the list is longer, and it's really our pleasure to have been able to serve people in that way. I want to give you just a little bit more information about who Eagle is. So take a second and let's watch this together.
What makes Eagle different? We aren't another training vendor who'll just put anyone in the classroom with your best people. And we aren't a software company who'll drop an app in your lap, run a QA session, and leave your users anxious and confused. And, well, we really aren't in the business of being boring. What we are is focused on developing holistic approaches that put people first. We utilize expert trainers who deliver from our virtual studios or live in your classrooms. Content developers who live on the bleeding edge of learning and development, supported by a design team immersed in your culture and content, with a focus on producing consistent outcome-based material. These teams are purpose-built around your needs and are responsible for bringing creative thinking to every stage of your users' engagement. That's what makes Eagle different. Let's learn to do more together. We get it?
Yeah, I think we got it. Makes sense.
Eagle has been in the business of serving our life science customers for more than 30 years. So as I mentioned, we have not only a large breadth of experience, but our experience is based on something that I think is really quite a large differentiator. We not only focus on training people on different platforms, different technologies, we focus on changing human behavior. So if you sit back and you think about what is our current situation that we're in right now, I know, and I had the chance to look at where you all are coming from in terms of your companies and your position within your companies. And that was very helpful for me, because what that told me is that you're coming from, in a large case, sales training. You're coming from L&D. And that's exactly the area and the focus where we try to support our partners in life science. We know that you have great people that have been working for you and continue to work for you. But we also know this is a different time. We know it's a different type of solution that we have to solve for when we have people working in maybe not the best situation and environments. Maybe they're not able to go in and meet with their doctors or with their customers. And we have to find creative solutions to support our people. And so what we've done for many, many years, and it doesn't change now, it only evolves now, is that we train people how to change their behavior based on the situation they're in. So whether you're launching a different technical platform that you want people to use, or you've totally changed the way that they're functioning within the enterprise, that's where we come in, and that's how we help our customers. So, I don't want to go through all the numbers here, but you can see easily on my screen that we have not only a large breadth and pool of different trainers that offer different in language as well as cultural training, but we've also trained over 200 platforms, which only proves the point that we are not a training company that focuses specifically on the platform. We focus on behavior change. And with that, that's how we are able to get more than 90% adoption every single time we train people, because we focus on the people and we focus on the human behavior. So I mentioned the crisis that we're all in, the situation that we're all in. I want to extend, of course, the feelings of sincerity that I know we're all trying to work through everything that's going on with COVID-19. And as our company, as NIIT and as Eagle has been trying to manage through this crisis on our own side, we realize that this is an opportunity for us to be able to help and support our partners, our customers, to serve you all. And in doing that, we came up with basically a three-pronged strategy. You can see it on the slide. There's the idea of first stabilizing. First, we had to make sure that your enterprise and your company felt stable, that you were able to continue your business, you were able to get people set up and starting to run and work as best as possible. Then we have to look to, once we're able to stabilize the company and stabilize your people and get people almost back to a sort of a routine, how do we start to normalize that process so people can start to feel confident and comfortable and go back to their sort of new day-to-day? And then eventually, how do we evolve? And this is really where I think we all have an opportunity, especially when you think about training. When I think about training, and when I think about all of the training that I've designed for life sciences, I'm always looking to see, how is your current setup and how can we better it? And honestly, in times of great challenge, I truly believe comes great innovation and comes great improvement. And that's one of the reasons why we as a company came up with this idea. And it all just started with this little idea. And it's amazing what a little idea can blossom into. It was an idea of, how can we create something for our customers that is quick to market, that not only solves some of the biggest issues and pain points we were hearing from our life science customers, but also helps to not only elevate your people, but evolve your people and evolve your business. Because if we don't do that now, we're not going to be positioning ourselves in the best way for the future. So that's where this idea came from. And out of that idea is where we started to understand that working remotely is certainly changing the way people are viewing their business, right? But why not look at it to change the way you view your training? And so we came up with this new package solution and offering called Virtual Intelligence Remote Training Engagement Services. It's a set of ideas and a set of packages and solutions that are not only already pre-built to a certain extent, but they're also specifically built for you, and an ability for us to customize it for your specific need and solution. So I'll go at a high level through some of what we've designed. The first is this remote work excellence kit. You may have even seen this if you follow any of us on LinkedIn. NIIT Limited has been posting quite a bit about this, but we have developed and designed, it's already done and it's already out there, an 18 micro lessons kit. It's done through the platform of Articulate Rise. So if you're familiar with that, it feels very engaging and interactive, and there's a lot of fun visuals and stories within it. And these 18 lessons are focused on how to set your people up to really work in home and a remote environment and be successful. So we focus on topics like remote business etiquette. That's important, especially if your people are dealing with customers. You want to make sure that they're approaching things correctly and with the right tone. We talk about how to have virtual meetings. We talk about how to schedule your days, how to deal with distractions and challenges of working from home, especially when you have a lot of different situations at home. I'll tell you some personal information about me. I have a 1-year-old daughter. And so it can be incredibly hard because I don't have any childcare. So how do I manage working from home and doing all the things that I need to do to keep my business going and to keep my company's business going and to meet with people just like you today while trying to balance that? That kit offers some ideas and hints and solutions. And the great thing about that is that as a thank you for all of you for joining us today, we are going to be sending that to you complimentary. We'll be giving you all the files that you can post on your own LMS. It's fully packaged. We can give you whatever format you want, SCORM compliant, all that good stuff. But we will be giving that to you. So Sharon at the end will make sure to give you the details on how that's done. So that's a thank you from us to you, and hopefully you'll find some help with that.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, our pleasure. We also developed, for those that are familiar with Viva, which I'm sure most of you are, we also developed a kit for how to support people leveraging life science applications like Viva to still have their calls and to still run their CRM in an efficient and virtual way. And then the two things that we're going to focus on specifically today is the virtual selling skills kit, as well as the remote delivery support toolkit. So the virtual selling skills toolkit is what we're going to start with first. And this is truly an idea that's based in the idea of helping your teams to sell in this modern world. And I first want to go through the overarching program objectives. And I laugh as I'm saying that because I know that there are a lot of people out there that believe it is as simple as selling is as simple as being in person as it is being virtually. And I have to say, I don't think that skill set translates. I think you have to practice selling remotely. I think you have to practice doing anything virtually. We are not equipped naturally to work and talk through a lens on a computer or through a keyboard. And so we have to set our people up to know how to come across professionally, to engage people. And so this is really where the foundation of this virtual selling skills program is based in. So I'm going to talk about the objectives, and then I'm going to go into some more of the critical concepts. Once I'm done talking about those things, we will pause for some questions. So at this point, I do want to just do another check-in with you guys. How is my pace? Would you like me to go faster, go slower? If you go to your participant panel, there's an option you can click, go faster or go slower. I'm going to look at the panel right now and see your responses.
It's okay. Absolutely fine.
Wonderful. Thank you. I see a thumbs up. Thank you so much. Green check mark. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you so much. It's always good to check in with people. All right, so now let's go back to the virtual selling skills program objectives. Now, the first thing that this program starts to solve for is understanding the key differences between in-person and virtual sales calls. How many times have you been in a situation, and just think about this for a second, please, follow along with me here. Have you been in a situation where maybe you meet someone initially on a phone call or on a video or a conference chat? Maybe they don't have their video on. And then this was before the time of COVID, but then you would meet them in person and it would be a totally different experience. You would have almost immediate rapport. You would have fun things to talk about. It was a much more natural experience. Have you experienced this before? I know I have many, many times. And I think this is a really important thing that we need to teach our people, especially our salespeople, how to nurture an environment where they can create that same type of feeling. That is, again, not something that comes naturally. It takes time, it takes thought, and it actually takes some strategy. So that's one of the core elements of this program, that we really think through those different tips on how to do that. The other thing we do is we explore evidence-based strategies for how to engage your audience. So this goes back to the whole thing that I said when I was introducing myself and Eagle. We focus on human behavior. At the end of the day, the one thing we have in common is we're all human. So how do we leverage the psychology of human behavior to better connect with our people and with our customers? So that's another really critical point that we cover. We also talk about thinking through the best method for conducting your virtual presentations. I'm going to go into an example of this in a second, but that's a really fun one, because we certainly have a lot of different formats and platforms at our disposal to use when we connect with our salespeople, but not all of them are created equally. And you also have to think about who you're trying to sell to and the personalities of who you're trying to sell to. So that's a really important point. We're also going to talk about some secrets for optimal virtual selling. And of course, who doesn't want to know what those secrets are? And then maximizing technology for your benefit, overcoming different technical challenges. If you cannot get the vehicle that you're working on under control, and I say vehicle, I'm referring to whatever technology you're using, it doesn't matter what you say, it doesn't matter what your message is, you will not be as effective as you need to be. Full stop. Full stop. So that is a really important point. And I will tell you, there are so many people along the skills curve, if you will, of abilities, technological abilities. But in all of my years of training people, designing training for people, listening to customers in all of the situations that they have and where they need support for their people, I have never come across a situation where we can't upskill people and teach them how to do it better. Never. Because it's absolutely possible. And then finally, how do we master these practices and how do we take all of these ideas and pull it down into application? Because again, I could be pushing you tons of information like I'm pushing to you right now, but until I get you to practice and until I get you to actually do it yourself, it's going to be a different experience in total. And the really fun part of that, I think, is also how do we handle objections in a virtual setting? Because that's not as simple, I think, as you may come to think. So now let's get into a little more of the finer details. This is really fun. I really enjoy this part of it. So we're going to, certainly, when you think about the different concepts that are covered, we're certainly going to introduce how do you use virtual selling tools to your own benefit. I mean, that's sort of the overarching idea, right? But then we're going to debunk some myths. Everyone, and this is what you'll find in adult learning, you'll find that everyone comes with different experiences to the table. Whether you have someone earlier in their career, mid part of their career, end of their career, they're all coming with different experiences. And all those experiences are valuable. Those experiences also can be challenges for us as trainers, for us as managers to try to overcome with them. And some of that can be, again, psychological. So what's their experience working remotely? What's their experience selling in a virtual setting? For some of the people that are maybe towards the end of their life in their career, that's probably going to be a smaller percentage than people that are starting their career. So we have to consider that curve of the audience that we have and what we're trying to provide to train and help our people. So that's a really important aspect and concept that we talk about. The other thing is, I really truly believe that when you enter into this virtual world, there are a lot of benefits. Think about it. Are there some things that have become easier for you? I know for myself, yes. In fact, I find that I can have better conversations with people because if I can get them to focus on me and we're having a one-on-one, it is way more fruitful than in the past where I would have to run past someone in the hallway. Now I can get their attention and their dedicated attention. And that is the beauty and benefit of some virtual selling. So we're going to talk about how to leverage those advantages to your benefit. Then we're going to talk about dynamic storytelling. Who doesn't like to make their experience become a part of a story? And by that, I mean, when you take your message and you format it in such a way that you now are telling a story, you are going to engage your people in a totally different way. And that's another thing that we cover. We talk about how to do it. We talk about why it works. We talk about the best way to apply something like this, which I think is really helpful. And then we go into how to capture and keep your audience attention. So I want to leverage some dynamic visual storytelling for you here as a way to talk about this concept. Let me tell you, last week sometime I was on a call. There were maybe 5 or 6 of us on the line, and we all had our videos up, which I always find is a very wonderful thing because you really feel a little bit more human and connected when you can see someone. And I knew that the one gentleman I was trying to get to really listen to the point I was making, he had disconnected. He wasn't paying attention. I could see he was sort of maybe responding to an email or doing something else. He was sort of cheating on our meeting, if you will. And I had to find a way to reconnect with him. And so the first thing that I did was I blanked my screen. And that made him notice, wait a minute, something's going on here. Okay. So I caught his attention. Then I immediately looked into the camera and I used his name and I said, hey, John. And then I followed up with what I needed to say. So it was a really, really nice way to capture his attention again and then get him back into the point of the conversation without making him feel uncomfortable, without me getting flustered. And that was a way to recapture his interest. So these are some of the topics and ideas that we pull through in these virtual selling skills. Of course, we also talk about technology. Technology, we believe, is actually your friend in this situation. We talk about some ways of how to leverage your camera setup, your audio setup, but we also are very sensitive to the fact that there are different situations for people and different ways that their home life is. And so we think about and we showcase ideas for how people can best position themselves to feel good when they're talking to people and to feel professional and to also come across the best way as possible for the person that they're speaking with. Then the ever-present overcoming technical challenges. We talk about tips and tricks on that. And then we also go into how do you make sure you don't lose the attention of your customer before your call even begins. Okay, so what does this mean? Let me give you an example. Let's say you know the customer that you're dealing with is a technical buyer. So what I mean by that is they are very technical in nature. They are someone that are more specific to the nuts and bolts of what you're trying to get across. And they're probably one person as a part in your sales process. So I know I need to get in contact with him. I know I want to have a conversation with him, but how do I do this? The last thing I'm going to do is build a presentation that's going to be flowery and you know, all of these sorts of things that aren't going to resonate with him. I'm going to bring him data. I'm going to bring him facts. And before I even get on the phone with him, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare him. So I'm going to send him an email. I'm going to bullet out my points. I'm going to say, here's how I'm going to reach out to you. Here is the meeting. Here is the video. If you have questions, here's another reference point of material. Once I get on the line with him, he will already know that I've done my homework. I've thought through all the areas where he could have points of failure in talking to me. And when I get on, I've already tailored my messaging and my visuals to really meet his pace and need. And I think that's really important. Let me pause on that for a second. In sales, and you all know this, matching the pace of your customer is very critical and probably one of the hardest things to do in a virtual setting, especially if the person you're talking to is not turned on their camera, won't really give you time to speak with them, all of those sort of challenges we have to overcome. So identifying ways and teaching your people how to identify what pace to match and how to do that is really critical. And again, that is not something that a salesperson who's been in the field and physically out in the field for years necessarily has a skill that translates to a virtual setting. So you have to prepare them with that. Then, and I talked a little bit about this before, but recognizing, addressing, and recovering from audience disengagement. Now, I have been in sales, I've been in training, I've been in design, I've been doing all of this stuff for the entirety of my career. But I will tell you, there are even moments and times where I can feel sort of stuck if I notice my audience is not paying attention and I get uncomfortable. And the last thing you absolutely want to do is get flustered. And it's a natural thing to happen when you feel like someone's not paying attention to you and you're trying to get them to. You can feel uncomfortable too, and it can turn into a very awkward situation really quickly. So we teach people how to recover from that. And there's a lot of cool tips and tricks on how to do that. So we do talk about that. We also cover how do you initiate a sales call in a virtual environment. What are some of the best ways to do that? And of course, delivering the right message with the proper tools, using the best method at the right time. And so this can seem very complicated in some parts because you don't necessarily always have to use your video. You don't always have to necessarily use your WebEx platform or your oh, it seems like someone has come off of mute. Do you mind going back on mute for a moment, please? And we'll, thank you so much. We'll open back up for questions in just a moment. So using the best tools and the best method and the right message is really a critical point as well. And then of course, we cover best practices. Now, these are some of the really important concepts, and there's quite a bit, as you can see. This is not just a quick bit of overview. This is really getting into the meat and potatoes of what this virtual selling skills kit covers and what is important for you to make sure that you're providing for your people. As I've mentioned previously, we did want to find a way to help you get through the noise, to help you see what's the easiest way that you can solve for this within your organization. I know that it's not easy to not only create new content for a sales organization or for your L&D department. There's so much information out there. There's so many different ways that you can create content. There's so many different hoops that you have to jump through. So one of the ways that we try to help with this was we said, okay, let's think of creating a baseline, a phase one, if you will, of content that we can already create so that what this does is it sort of creates a baseline set of content for you. And it covers, from an andragological standpoint or an adult learning standpoint, it covers some of the most important aspects of how we meet those concepts that I just previously mentioned to you. So building a baseline of content and then knowing that our customers are going to want, and they should, customize the content for their own specific needs. So how do we do that? And we came up with a way. So what we did was we basically built out these 4 components as a phase one, if you will. So the first is we said, okay, we want to provide people with a RISE course. It's going to be 5 micro lessons. It's going to prepare people before they get into a virtual instructor-led training course. The virtual instructor-led training course is going to be 3 hours in length. It's going to have role plays. It's going to be interactive. It's going to include not only your salespeople, but it's going to include your managers. So you're helping build that leadership within the training itself. Then we're going to have reference material. And then we're going to also have coaching support material for your managers. Because again, aside from just the selling aspect of all of this, virtual management is also a challenge for people, and we recognize that. So we wanted to make sure that we could integrate all of these aspects into this one sort of baseline solution. So we've created this, and this is in essence what this virtual selling and skills kit is. But it's really important to note, this is to help you get quick to market, but it's absolutely something that we offer for customization, and that I really truly believe you should look to customize, and you should look to say, how does this best meet and solve for our business needs, and what else can we do? And so so that's sort of the high level idea of how we wanted to come and prepare and provide a solution set for you from a virtual selling standpoint. Now, I'm going to pause and I would like to open it up for questions or comments specifically to the Virtual Selling Skills Toolkit and the principles that I spoke about just now.
We would like to have any questions in the chat menu, so we'll choose the questions and answer them in sequence.
Hi, Jacqueline. This is Sushil. Can I ask my question?
Yes, please, Sushil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The point is this: most of the organizations, correct? They are also started this micro learning series. And thank you very much for giving us this self-packaged learning tool over there. But my question is that in your experience, correct, have you guided a sales force, correct, who has done the virtual selling? How do they take appointment from customer, and how the customer gives them the time for the virtual call?
That's a really great question, and thank you for that. So in my experience, what we've done, and we've actually already launched this virtual selling skills kit to one of our companies. I won't mention the name, but to a life science company. And one of the ways that we've found that it's been very helpful for them is that they've actually found higher levels of productivity with their HCPs or with their doctors, because previously where they would have to have slotted times to meet and try to have sales calls, they were able to find ways to connect with the doctors and say, look, we understand you're in a situation right now that doesn't afford you a lot of time, or you don't have necessarily even the ability to quickly connect with us. So let us show you how we can easily do this. And so it's basically offering the easiest way, which is through the technology, to get them on a quick call with you. And what we have found is that actually the doctor's responses have been very positive. In fact, saying that they have been able to slot time in their own schedules where they can block, let's say, an hour of their time and then schedule in the specific people that they want to chat with. And so we offered that as a part of the solution set for them to say, this is how you can set up your days, and this is how it can become easier for you. And we're seeing that it's trending towards people actually finding it to be much more helpful for them.
Okay, thank you, Jacqueline.
Okay, Jacqueline, we have Debashish Dasgupta and Kumar Gaurav, who have the similar question. They wanted
Yes.
you to elaborate on the 2-page quick reference card and coaching card.
Oh, absolutely. So in reference to, let me go back here so you can take a look at this again. So in reference to the 2-page quick reference card, this 2-page reference card specifically talks about the technical aspects of the platform in which you typically leverage. So we actually have customized versions of the quick reference material for whatever platform you typically tend to use. So for example, if it's WebEx, Zoom, Adobe Connect, that sort of thing, we offer that support service there. It also offers tips and tricks at a high level. So it takes a lot of the core concepts and condenses it into a quick reference sort of a tool. So it is virtual. It's not in any kind of a paper format. Surely you could print it out if you wanted to, but it is a virtual deliverable. And for the 2-page coaching card, this offers opportunities for the coach to see how they can support their people through this virtual selling skills. And so it's again coming through the lens or the perspective of the manager dealing with their team members. And so we do give best practices, we give ideas of how they should be working with their people, and we also talk through some points of engagement for how they should be checking in with their team members. Any other questions? You're welcome. There was a thanks in the chat. That's why I said you're welcome. Your audio works just fine. Don't worry. All right. So with that, unless there's any other questions, let's continue. Does that sound good, everyone? Green check mark or a thumbs up if that sounds good. All right. Thank you very much. So now let's talk about, and this I hope is where your L&D folks on the line here, your ears perk up a little bit. We're going to talk about remote delivery and the support toolkit that we've come up with for this solution set. So with the remote delivery support toolkit, this is really a focus and a function of knowing that you have an entire breadth, most likely, and depth of a team that's very skilled in training. In fact, I will have to say, some of the sales trainers that I've met in life sciences have been above and beyond some of the most expert trainers that I've seen. But with that in mind, I've also seen that it, again, doesn't translate necessarily having a wonderful trainer that can go side to side or look over the shoulder of someone in a room or look someone in the eyeballs in person. It's a totally different experience than actually doing it virtually. So we identified there is certainly a need here to set people up so that they can function and train and connect with their people in the best way possible. So similar to how we ran through this last kit, I'm going to run through the remote delivery support objectives. So the first thing we do is we want to look at your content so that we can recommend how all of your content works best in a virtual environment. Again, not all content is created equally, and not all content works through every sort of modality or sort of tool. So taking a look and doing a pressure test on your content is really critical. You want to make sure that the way that your training has been established and your learning journey and plan has been created is going to meet the requirements through a virtual setting. And sometimes it's as simple as making some little tweaks. Other times it's building in more engagement. And so having polls, for example, or having different questions or opening people off of their mute line, you have to find different ways to keep engaging people. That's so critical. I can't stress that enough. And so we look at your content and we make recommendations on how you may want to make modifications to it for your remote training delivery. Then we actually showcase our best practices and our experience. I mean, this is literally what we do day to day. We are the experts in the field of how to change behavior through training. And so we say, okay, yes, you're the experts in training your specific business need, but let us offer you some examples and some upskilling so that your people and your trainers and even your strategy for content works best in a virtual setting, because that's really what we're focusing on. We also want to think about, once you've chosen the platform for your content, let's take a look at the functionality and let's make sure all of your trainers not only have been upskilled in that tool, but feel confident, and we can make sure that they can handle and drive the tool, if you will, with success. Just as I mentioned before, we've all been in calls. Think about it, where you get on the line and someone can't figure out how to share, or what's even worse, have you been on a call where someone's camera turns on and they don't know that it's on and you're looking at their four chins and up their nose? It's the worst thing ever. It's not professional. You do not want people to have that sort of experience. You want your trainers to immediately capture the attention of all their attendees, build that intentional rapport right off the bat, and get your people to engage and understand that this training is for their best benefit as well. And so knowing that your people and your trainers know how to use this platform well is really critical. It also offers opportunities like breakout rooms. Have any of you used breakout rooms in any of your virtual trainings? I hope the answer is yes, because it's a wonderful functionality. But making sure that your trainers also feel comfortable in setting up meetings and using breakout rooms and managing all of that, that's how you really take your training and evolve it and bring it up a notch. And honestly, truly, I believe you can have an incredible training experience that's even more personal than in person. Then that's a pretty serious statement to make, but I truly believe it. We also talked then about some baseline industry best practices. I do think that's really important, because you do want people, again, to have the right level of professionalism and showcase how to be trainers in the best way through whatever virtual platform you're using. And then the other beautiful thing about this remote delivery is that we understand sometimes the size of your team does not necessarily lend itself to having production support on a call. So what do I mean by production support? What I mean is, if you are having a trainer, and let's say you're launching training for 50 people within each class, and you're doing maybe 500 classes. Within a call of 50 or a training session of 50 people, that's quite a large number, by the way. You're going to need some production support on that call. You're going to want people to be paying attention to the chat. You're going to want to make sure that you're checking in with people to make sure that they're paying attention. The trainer itself should be focusing on the content. You want someone to help support on some of the other aspects. So production support help is really critical. And so making sure that your people either have that set up and planned, or that you are leveraging support like someone like Eagle to help you do that. That's another way to think about it. And then the other part to that is the live support during the trainings, which is kind of what I was talking about. But also even setting up your meetings. So there are so many different ways through all these different training platforms, Zoom, WebEx, Adobe Connect, the list goes on how you can set up your meetings, whether it's a meeting or a training format, how you can change your settings for the different functionality that will actually be employed during the session. So knowing how to do that is also really important, because different ways that you turn on different functionality will affect how the feel of the meeting or the training will go. So we cover that as well, and that's a really important point. Again, it's learning how to drive that tool that you're using. So as a part of all of these sort of big line picture for remote delivery, we also wanted to make sure that we provided for you all, again, a baseline sort of starting place and a starting point for how to do this. It can be incredibly overwhelming, and I can totally relate and understand. I worked with one pharma company a couple of years ago where they were deciding that they were going to start to move and transition their content to more of a virtual setting, and taking a look at all of their onboarding plans. And we did a full assessment, of course, and we looked at everything. We looked at all the learning journeys by role, by type, and then tried to identify how do we do all of this in a meaningful, engaging way that's not just a whole bunch of VILTs. And I can personally relate to the feeling of this is a big job, and how do we do this? And so the solve for a quick response for all of you during this time of COVID, knowing that we need to have a quick response for you, was to build out, again, a package that could hopefully help. So with this package, we built out a couple of different things. So we certainly offer the virtual training consultation, which is what I mentioned as the first point, which is taking a look at your content. The second thing we wanted to do was to train your trainers, which is what we call it TTT for short, where we talk to them and we teach them how to train on specific remote training skills and specific system functionality. And this is customized based on whatever tool you're using, but we've already pre-created all of that training based on the 5 top training platforms. So Adobe Connect, Zoom, etc. And then also production support for the virtual sessions. So let me talk a little bit more about the production support, just to clarify what I was stating before. When you have large scale training deployments and you all have plans that you're constantly executing to, that is quite a logistical uptaking, if you will, or undertaking, where you're trying to figure out and register all of your attendees. You're trying to track attendance. You're trying to ensure that the meetings have been set up correctly. That it could become a job for a person in and of itself. If that's done incorrectly, the amount of frustration it causes for your participants, the amount of disconnect you'll already achieve with the people you're trying to train before you even get them into the classroom, is something that could absolutely be a point of failure for you. So that's an area that's not even necessarily related to your training content. It's again related to the remote delivery component that we offer that support. So I can think back to, we worked with another company. I wish I could say the names. It would make it more meaningful. We worked with another company, and this was a handful of years ago. They were trying to launch a massive virtual training for a new platform that they were rolling out. It was all across the globe, of course, all different time zones, and it was just such an undertaking. So we said, look, let us own that for you. We'll take care of all of the invites. We'll take care of the tracking of attendance. We'll make sure that if we're breaking it into districts or regions, that we've managed that for you. We'll make sure that your managers are already pre-trained, and we'll break that into different regions so that the breakout sessions work. So all of the structure and strategy was taken care of through our production team and through our IT and logistics part of our operations, so that was taken away and they didn't have to worry about it. And I have to say, my customer at the time, she was very, very pleased, because at the end of the day, she could focus on what she needed to focus on, which was, what's the strategy for the training? How are we communicating it to people and getting her trainers up and ready to train? So another important point there. And then finally, we offer, as a part of this baseline phase 1 solution set, these reference materials, again, for whichever platform you're using, best practice tips and tricks, just as a quick reference point for your trainers. It really is important to note that for both of these phase 1 sort of solution sets that we have established, they are baseline solutions to help you get quick to market. And we absolutely encourage that you really take a deep thought on how this could help you, and also how this could just be the baseline that helps to evolve your way of thinking when it comes to your virtual training and virtual selling. And really, that's the beauty of all of this, is that it should be customized. You should be thinking about it at long term, not just short term for stabilizing, but the normalize and the evolve strategy. And so it's our hope that through this conversation that we've had today, we've offered you some ideas and some food for thought in terms of how to really think about your business. And hopefully I've inspired you to think that there are actually some really good things that can come out of this. And I think you'll see that it can actually impact your business in a very positive way. And this is what we have done for years and years and years with our customers. And so we are here to help you. And that's really at the core of why we wanted to have this webinar today, was to share that information with you. So I do want to open it up. I know we have about 7 minutes left for any final questions and answers.
So, hey, Jackie, Ayan had posted a question a while back. His question is there any data on the retention level of virtual sales training to a customer?
You cut out a little bit. Can you repeat the question? Okay.
So Ayan's question is there any data on the retention level of virtual sales proposition to a customer?
That's a very good question. And at this point, I don't have any set of data to be able to provide for you at quick face. But I see in the chat here, Abbas has actually responded to this as well. And I agree with what Abbas is saying, just so that everyone knows what the comment I'm referring to is. He mentions that sales interaction data is hard to find for reasons of lack of objective information and the notion of confidentiality of sales effectiveness data. And Abbas, I love it. You said one old sales trick is to ask your customer in the beginning and again at the end of the call which parts of the virtual interaction worked well, and also what could you do better. Research shows that asking for positives along with areas of improvements encourage your customers to reflect on the benefits. That's so true. It's so true. And what Abbas is even talking about there is, again, the focus on the psychology of human behavior. But the long and the short of your answer, to be very precise, is to say, at this point, it is very hard to give you specific data sets on that, but hopefully we're able to provide some clarity there.
Jackie, if I could jump in, for the group, because NIIT is also in the business of delivering training, where we actually take feedback, there is a lot of data which says today that over the last 3 or 4 years, virtually in some cases where you can get people to practice and do the labs on their own actually gets better satisfaction than people in class, where sometimes they're waiting for the trainer to engage with the slowest learner. So there is data on that, because that we measure, we have satisfaction scores, we can break it down to what worked well and what did not work well. That does not translate that well to sales data. And what I was politely trying to say was, nobody wants to share their sales data with anybody else.
Yeah.
And sometimes even within companies, people don't want to share their data with other regions.
That
So
is true.
it's a reality. Back to you, Jackie. Thank you.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true. That is hard to get. It is funny how even within the own organization that can be a challenge. It looks like there may be some other questions here.
Yes, yes.
Yes, please go ahead, Sharon.
No, I said there are 2 questions.
Yes. So Amarji had a question. Jackie, could you tell us different ways to retain the attention of participants during virtual training programs?
Absolutely. So I've mentioned some at the forefront, but let's go into a little bit more detail here. When you are in a virtual training program, so let's talk about the program point. The biggest part of making sure that people know what to expect and also can envision themselves taking the training is one of the first steps of ensuring behavioral change and engagement. So think of it this way. The change management aspect, even before you get people into your training classroom, is really critical. So ensuring that you have now reached out to your people who you're trying to train, give them the vision, give them the landscape of what we're trying to achieve from the training. Because ultimately, what is training meant to do? Let's break it down to the simplest point. We're trying to help someone skill so that it makes their life easier. So if you set the vision for people to understand that that is why you're establishing different training, it will not only break down barriers of entry for people to want to listen to you, but it will also hopefully increase engagement even before they get to the training. So that's big picture. That's the program aspect. Once you get someone into the classroom, virtual classroom, the engagement elements there from a tactical level are all based on the platform in which you're leveraging for the training. So if you're leveraging, for example, a Zoom session, utilizing the different interactive elements like polling, like a breakout session, like clicking the green check marks or give me a thumbs up, or am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Some of those old tips and tricks work. The other thing is keep your class sizes smaller if you can. And the reason is you want to keep your people engaged. This is certainly a webinar, so it's 1 to a lot of people. But if you lower your class size count, you are going to have more interaction and more natural flow of conversation, which helps people mentally engage and start to envision themselves to be successful in whatever you're trying to train. And so I highly recommend, when you think about establishing your training, really think about class sizes for sure, but the individual learner's journey. The other thing is, when you're thinking of your overarching program, and this is a little, tip and trick here, when you think about your overarching learning program for your people, think about varied modality. Do not just use one way of trying to engage people. You have different personalities that you're dealing with, different ways people work, different ways people think. You want to build out a matrix where you're thinking about that, and you want to establish engagement points across different modalities. So for example, you can leverage VILTs, you can leverage discussion boards, you can leverage blog posts, you can leverage videos, you can leverage lots of different rich media content to engage people. People want to leverage and consume training like they consume marketing. And I'm going to pause after I just said that, because I think that's really important. People want to consume training the way they consume their social or marketing experience. If you can get your training and your communications to your people to line up closer to that channel and avenue, you're going to find a lot more return of success. I know we're at the top of the hour. Any final questions before I pass it back over to Sharon?
Yeah, Ms. Jacqueline, just a question for you.
Yes.
Post lockdown, actually, I posted in the group. What are the three major challenges you look in bringing pharma sales force to webinars and pharma customers to webinars?
Honestly, I think the biggest one is time. To be quite frank, I think time is the hardest thing. You have to showcase your value prop to get people into a conversation with you. And I think if you're able to showcase value, showcase professionalism, and showcase that there is a reason for them to get on the call with you and that they're going to have a meaningful experience and a positive outcome where they feel that either they've learned something or something has helped them, that's going to be your biggest point of success. But I think that is the hardest thing. Getting people engaged is the hardest thing, which is why you really have to get your people to know how to connect appropriately with their customers. Because if you're going to try the same thing over and over again, you're not going to be successful if they're not responding, for example, to webinars or wanting to speak with you that way. You have to be creative and teach your people how to, again, like I mentioned before, leverage the different types of technical modalities to reach them effectively. So if you're only sending an email over and over again and they're not responding to try to get a meeting, then you have to think in a different way of how to capture their attention. And I truly believe it's based on value prop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I see another question here is what should be the ideal duration of each session so that people are attentive throughout the session? Great question. I would suggest that it depends on the content. If you are having a longer session day, you need to give people breaks. People can only truly listen for 20 minutes is what they say, really full focus. And so when you build your training, and again, it goes back to human behavior, you have to think of it as the way we keep people's attention in movies. Think of it that way. We can get people to sit for 3 hours in a movie without taking a break. Why do you think that is? It's because of the way that you set your tone and intention throughout. You're building up problems, you're resolving them. You're telling a story, you're resolving it. And you're constantly sort of building this entire narrative. So I mention that because it depends on how you establish your content. It's not just about duration and giving people breaks. It's about thoughtful preparation and design of your content as well. But generally speaking, depending on how many people and the kind of trainer and engagement that you've set up for the session, try to keep them shorter, give them breaks as much as you can, keep them entertained and interacted with, or use interactions to your point and benefit. And that really will help things to feel interesting and sped up. And also get them to apply what you're teaching them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Sharon. And I just want to thank everyone before I get off here for all your attention and time. It's been honestly my pleasure to speak with you all today.